Or two. So I'm starting. Chapter 68, Lights Out, in about 5 parts. 6. When the interim sheriff pulled back from Rob's car, the vile grin on his face made Mark so mad he could have spit. "Thank you very much," Rob said coolly. He smiled from Rob's ear. Man. "I feel the same way about you, Fred." Mark thought that Rob might be a better politician than he thought himself to be. He smiled as he watched Barney's grin turn into a sour look at his failing to get a rise out of his opponent. The acting sheriff stomped off like a child with hurt feelings. Mark gave Rob a pat on the back and a wink. A short time later, Mark and Jess arrived at Kurt's house. It didn't take long for the men to move out onto the deck behind the house, while the women stayed mostly inside. Most of the men were residents of Promise Point, Mark noticed. The topic of conversation had turned from stories about Kurt to how horrible a sheriff Barney would make, and to how they could make sure Rob got elected. Mark tried to be sociable, but his mind kept thinking about John and the New Age ranch. Should they really try to take it back? Maybe they should wait and see if Rob was elected. If he was, he could officially be involved. "What do you think, Mark?" Greg asked. Mark had no idea what they were talking about. "Think about what?" he said in a startled voice. "Earth to Mark," Greg laughed. "We were talking about having Rob debate Barnes. We could do it in front of the courthouse several days before the election, maybe on a Sunday afternoon." "That sounds okay, but how many people would show up? It's a long walk to Floresville for most people. How much good would it do if only a few people showed up?" "Even if just a few actually come, I think the results will spread by word of mouth. I believe it'll give at least some of the people a chance to see Rob and how he responds to their concerns." "But what if I blow it?" Rob asked. "You won't," Greg responded confidently. "Besides, you're already the underdog. What have you got to lose?" "Nothing, I guess." "Then I'll talk to the county commissioners about it," Greg said. "We can set it up about 10 days before the election, which should give the grapevine enough time to work." All of the other men thought it was an excellent idea. Only Rob and Mark seemed to be on the tentative side. Mark looked at his watch and excused himself, saying he wanted to get home before it got too late. He went inside, found Jess, and told her he was ready. The couple offered their condolences to Mrs. Thompson once more and headed out to the Blazer. As they were climbing in, Greg came running out of the house. "Mark, I'm glad I caught you." The real estate developer was slightly out of breath. He stood next to the door of the big Chevy and spoke through the window. "Rob was just telling me about the plan y'all came up with to take care of the guy who shot Kurt." "Yeah," Mark said, prompting the man to make his point. "Look, Rob can help you plan and train, but he can't go. He can't do anything that's the slightest bit unlawful, or it may ruin his chance to get elected. If Barney found out about it, he'd throw the book at him just to eliminate him from the race." Mark was quiet for a moment. They really needed Rob's expertise and leadership on the incursion, but they needed a sheriff they could depend on more. "You're right, Greg. Thanks." He patted the man on the arm and backed out of the driveway. On the drive home, Mark filled Jess in on the planned debate. She thought it was a good idea and agreed that word would get around, no matter how many people saw the actual deliberations.